If we as radical feminists say that we love women and girls and want to ensure that our work of strategic resistance is systematic and effective, we must continue viewing rape as an institutional rather than individual problem. Therefore, the rise of the rhetoric, blame the rapist, must be expanded to the rhetoric of extending culpability to entire communities for the purpose of subjecting both male supremacy and sexual assault to sustained scrutiny so that we can amass more information regarding how rape operates and what we should be doing about it.
And I just want to remind everybody, you know, the deeper I've gotten into politics, the more I have come to realize that they all hate us in their own, you know, different ways. They all hate us. So we really have to collectively come to the understanding that it's us against them. It's us against the agenda. And it wasn't until I was in a meeting with Wolf and Lier said, well, misogyny is your whole life. And it hit me like a freight train. The reality that people don't just randomly hate me. There's actually people that hate all women.
Canada is overrun with transgender ideology in the schools and the sports. I played roller derby 10 years ago.
Y también por si les puede servir a alguien que se encuentre en una situación parecida, ¿vale? Entonces, he escrito algo así como un manual de...
Hello and welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, the leading global organization defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. Many of us have been active feminists in the 1970s or even the 60s. We were not surprised when this new attack on women came along, and we have not changed our analysis. In 2018, we wrote a declaration on women's sex-based rights, which lays out our position, and it has been signed by 39,721 people from 160 countries, and it is supported by 547 organizations. To promote the declaration and sex-based rights for women, we have volunteer activists, including country contacts from every continent. Please join us. You can also become a member of WDI to help our work by volunteering or donating. You can write to info@womensdeclaration.com or have more information via your country contacts on the website womensdeclaration.com. This Zoom is a women-only webinar. We ask men to watch later on YouTube. We have subtitles. If you want subtitles in English, press the subtitle button and you can make them small, medium, or large. We also are going to have interpretation today because our first speaker is going to be speaking Spanish. So you can choose the English channel. It's the letters EN on your bar at the bottom of your screen in order to listen to the English version. Our program today We're going to be starting by a fellow Spanish feminist, a wonderful woman, Patricia Sornosa from Spain, who is going to tell us about her thoughts after the transgenderist storm. Then we will move to the USA, where the other three speakers are from, and we will be hearing from Lara Forsberg about gender ideology in schools. Then we will have Amie Ichikawa on why she signed the Declaration on Women's Sexual Rights. And finally, last but not least, we will have Jocelyn Crawley. She's going to tell us about sexual assault as core to patriarchy. So now, as I said, we're going to start by Patricia Sornosa. Patricia, she's a comedian, writer, actress, and feminist communicator born in Manises, Valencia in 1977. As a comedian, she cultivates a direct and very personal style. Hers is a combative humor that makes no concessions to political correctness, with a certain inclination towards the most controversial topics. I guess you understand what she's going to tell us about. Patricia continues to write and perform her comedy shows in venues and theaters, offering the audience her sarcastic opinion on the issues that matter to her, regardless of the fact that no one has asked her for it. So Patricia is going to tell us about her thoughts after the transgenderist storm. It is a great pleasure to have you here. So over to you, Patricia. Welcome.
Ahora, se oye, ¿verdad? Muy bien. Pues mi nombre es Patricia Sornosa y yo me gano la vida haciendo comedia con perspectiva feminista. También tengo la fea costumbre de expresar mi opinión en redes sociales, aunque ya sé que hacerlo no es un juego inofensivo, pues la expresión sarcástica de mis preocupaciones acerca del transgenerismo y sus leyes tuvo consecuencias reales y muy serias en mi vida. Yo me animé a criticar abiertamente el transgenerismo y yo ya sabía que recibiría resistencia porque había visto cómo se trataba a las mujeres que se atrevían a hacerlo, ¿no? En América del Sur, en Estados Unidos, en Canadá, en Reino Unido. O sea, los castigos se replicaban como si se tratara de un patrón de manipulación social cuidadosamente diseñado. Yo sabía que simplemente reflexionar sobre el transgenerismo entrañaba peligro, pero aún así me sorprendió la virulencia de los ataques que recibí. Si era consciente del peligro, ¿por qué me animé a hablar? Pues por varios motivos. Yo tenía una preocupación honesta sobre cómo la ley trans que se iba a implementar en España podía perjudicar a las mujeres, como las borraba legalmente como grupo. También me preocupaba lo dañino que podía ser para los niños hacerles creer que pueden nacer en un cuerpo equivocado o que el sexo se puede cambiar. Las feministas sabemos perfectamente que las mujeres somos el dique de contención entre los abusadores y la infancia y que si nuestros límites no están seriamente posicionados, los abusadores pueden acceder con más facilidad a los niños. Así que sabemos que tenemos que estar fuertes, ¿no? Y nada, yo vi esos peligros y quise avisar, la verdad. Yo sé que mucha gente pues no tiene el tiempo, ni las ganas, ni el interés de andar leyendo leyes o cuestionándose lo que se les dice en los medios, así que a mí me pareció indigno saber cosas y no dar la voz de alarma, aunque ya sospechaba que, bueno, hacerlo no me iba a beneficiar, porque dado el clima social establecido, ¿no? Yo sabía que pronunciándome no tenía nada que ganar y sí mucho, mucho que perder. Luego, a un nivel filosófico, a mí también me preocupaba que las ideas transgeneristas contaran con tantísimo apoyo social en una sociedad que se consideraba a sí misma cada vez más feminista, ¿no? Yo pensaba, vamos a ver, ¿qué entiende la gente por feminismo? Entonces, o sea, ¿cómo puedes creerte feminista y sostener que el maquillaje, los tacones o las emociones pueden volver a cualquier hombre e incluso a un violador en una mujer, ¿no? Y también tenía sospechas fundadas, creo, de que todo ese asunto, todo el asunto del transgenerismo iba sobre proteger los privilegios de los hombres, la verdad, que de los peores hombres, de los hombres más egoístas. O sea, yo veía que al decir yo deseo, ellos, aunque ese deseo fuera injusto, realmente pudiera perjudicar a las mujeres, las leyes se ponían a funcionar en muchísimos países, ¿no? Para convertir ese deseo en una realidad. Las mujeres no podemos decir yo deseo y que las leyes de los países cambien. O sea, no, Y el esquema para las mujeres suele ser un no rotundo. Es decir, deseo votar, no. Deseo divorciarme, no. Deseo conducir, no. Deseo planificar mi maternidad, no. O sea, yo sabía perfectamente que este asunto no tenía nada que ver con ampliar los derechos de las mujeres, ni muchísimo menos. Y luego también todo ese asunto de tomar el género y el sexo como sinónimos, a mí me parecía una locura gigante. Así que de verdad que sentí que tenía que atravesar el miedo que me daba expresarme y oponer algo de resistencia a una ideología tan dañina y regresiva, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué hice? ¿Qué hice yo para recibir el maltrato que recibí después? ¿Demostré mi inconformidad con las leyes trans usando la violencia o dañando a personas concretas? Pues no. Yo soy cómica y mi especialidad es señalar los comportamientos egoístas que dañan a las mujeres con bromas, que a lo único que le pueden hacer daño es al ego de alguien muy sensible. Así que yo escribía en redes sociales cosas que considero que no son para tanto, pero que causaron escándalo, porque con ellas yo daba voz a muchas otras feministas que no iban a ser amables con esta nueva religión machista, que no iban a mentir, que no iban a respetar los pronombres de nadie, sino que iban a cuestionar y a cachondearse incluso de los intentos de manipulación y de control de estos hombres tan egoístas, ¿no? Entonces yo fui una hereje y en Twitter y en Instagram y tal, dije cosas como, estoy en contra de la mal llamada ley trans por muchos motivos, pero el principal es que me la he leído. O, por ejemplo, el sexo no se asigna al nacer, se observa. Si hay pene, es un hombre. Si hay vulva, es una mujer. Si hay un coño bien grande, es una feminista. También dije que el sexo no es ciencia, o sea, el sexo es ciencia, el género, creencia, y la confusión interesada entre sexo y género es violencia. O otra que a mí me gusta mucho es, ¿cuántos queers hacen falta para cambiar una bombilla? Pues uno que declare que siente que la bombilla está cambiada y todos los demás para silenciar y amenazar a las mujeres que señalan que ahí no hay luz. Bueno, pues todas y estas frases y alguna más acabaron explotándome en la cara en el verano de 2022, convirtiéndose en un escándalo y mi caso en un caso paradigmático de la cultura de la cancelación y en una de las situaciones más exigentes a las que yo me he enfrentado en mi vida. Que al cabo de unos años recogí todas estas frases y hicimos un libro que se tituló Picotazos con ilustraciones de Lina Álvarez. Y nada, yo pensé que si estas frases tuvieron tanto poder como para enfurecer al monstruo transgenerista, pues bien se merecían tener un lugar menos efímero, ¿no?, que las redes sociales. Vale, pues vamos a los hechos. ¿Qué pasó? Pues yo iba expresándome en redes sociales, me iba expresando con claridad, la verdad que con bastante claridad mi postura. Y nada, pues ya recibí algunos cariñitos de los activistas trans, pero el verano del 2022 la cosa se desmadró, porque yo en agosto fui invitada a participar en un podcast muy conocido que se llama Estirando el Chicle, y bueno, mi sola presencia desató una tormenta de indignación que tuvo consecuencias graves en mi vida, ¿vale? Como decía, mi caso puede enmarcarse en lo que se llama cultura de la cancelación, que se define pues, como un fenómeno social en el que una persona puede ser vetada, ignorada o víctima de un complot que promueve su eliminación digital o social por conductas problemáticas o por, como fue mi caso, simplemente por comentarios que se consideraron inaceptables. Bueno, pues fui al podcast y muchas personas calificaron mis puntos de vista como transfobia, cuestionaron la decisión de darme visibilidad y pidieron que se boicoteara el podcast. Recibí un acoso masivo que no se limitó al ámbito de las redes sociales, sino que se replicó en medios de comunicación como radios, televisiones y revistas. Y ese escándalo no fue porque yo criticara la ley en el podcast, porque eso nunca pasó. O sea, el escándalo fue por llevar al programa, y cito textualmente un diario de esa época, llevar a una cómica que en sus redes discrepa con la teoría queer y con la idea de que el sexo es un mero constructo social. Solo por eso se consideró imperdonable que me invitaran y bueno, y mi existencia también, se lo hicieron pagar caro a ellas y sobre todo a mí. O sea, yo en el programa, repito, no hablé de la ley trans ni de temas queer, o sea, yo solo deslicé un comentario acerca de que el género es opresión, que fue como muy fugaz, y aún así ese comentario lo acortaron en edición, me avisaron, me dijeron, mira, vamos a quitar esto porque no está la cosa como para ni siquiera nombrarlo, porque todas sabíamos, sin que nadie nos lo tuviera que decir, que antes de que se aprobara esa ley, pues las críticas al género como identidad estaban vetadas, eran peligrosas. Lo sabíamos, igual que un esclavo en la plantación de algodón sabe que no le conviene enfadar a un amo injusto y iracundo y violento, ¿no? Así de grande era la presión a la que se sometió a las mujeres para que sintiéramos y que sintamos aún miedo de hablar de un tema que nos afecta directamente, de expresar nuestras justas preocupaciones y bueno, y que vayamos con cuidado para que el amo no nos tenga que dar unos latigazos. Por supuesto que me los dieron, vaya que sí me los dieron. Os voy a contar los latigazos que me azotaron. Por supuesto, ahora el amo no se tiene que manchar las manos, ¿no? O sea, el amo puede castigarte manipulando la opinión pública y abocándote al aislamiento y a la falta de oportunidades y de recursos, ya te digo, sin ni siquiera mancharse las manos. Los latigazos fueron, por una parte, violencia digital. Recibí miles de insultos muy burdos de haters, pero otros más sofisticados en artículos de opinión que pretendían ser sesudos, ¿no? Recibí también muchísimas amenazas. Las presentadoras y las colaboradoras del programa al que acudí, pues la verdad es que me dejaron en desamparo al no defenderme, ya no a mí, sino a su derecho de poder invitar a quien quieran en su propio programa. Algunas de ellas llegaron a calificarme de error. También recibí pues, un ostracismo profesional y sanción social, o sea, sufrí descrédito en medios de comunicación de alcance nacional y experimenté en primera persona esa cancelación que oigo muchas veces a la gente de izquierdas decir que no existe. Me despidieron de Podimo. Yo tenía un podcast con otra cómica que funcionaba muy bien, íbamos a renovar el contrato, pero nada, cuando sucedió esto me pagaron una indemnización y me despidieron. Colaboraba en Carne Cruda. Aquí antes de que sucediera el escándalo ya no querían contar conmigo. Yo sospecho que fue porque ya había estado yo hablando con claridad acerca de este asunto en redes sociales, pero cuando explotó el escándalo, pues en este programa de radio, Carne Cruda, hicieron algunos debates acerca de la libertad de expresión y tal. Bueno, tenían mi teléfono, por supuesto, yo había sido colaboradora de ellos, pero no me llamaron para explicarme, pero sí que consintieron que se me insultara reiteradamente en dichos debates. Tampoco me volvieron a llamar para actuar en el Teatro del Barrio, que se supone que es un teatro que está concienciado con las obras de izquierdas y con el feminismo. Y esto es por poner solo algunos ejemplos, ¿no? Por supuesto, no te dicen directamente que no te llaman por tus opiniones críticas con el género, así que a lo mejor son solo sospechas mías, infundadas, y esas decisiones simplemente forman parte de su libertad editorial. Hablamos de algo muy grave. La verdad es que si una persona pierde su trabajo, no por su desempeño profesional, sino por una controversia que ni constituye delito ni implica daño directo a terceros, ahí estamos hablando ya de sanciones sociales muy severas, difíciles de justificar, que atentan directamente contra la libertad de expresión. Luego, el hostigamiento de los activistas trans, pues no solo se quedó en redes tampoco. Me llamaban a los teatros a los que yo iba a actuar para intentar que me anularan las actuaciones. Muchos de ellos pues sucumbieron ante el miedo al descrédito y bueno, también recibí pintadas en fachadas de teatros que tenían que limpiar antes de la actuación y también en carteles y bueno, incluso en las actuaciones pues también he sido increpada en directo, digamos. Luego, otro de los latigazos es el daño en las relaciones sociales. Yo perdí a muchas amigas que de repente temían que se las relacionara conmigo y que se les pegara esa temida etiqueta de transfobia. Nadie quería hacerse, yo soy cómica y mucha gente quería hacerse fotos conmigo, pero a partir de entonces nadie quería hacerse fotos conmigo. Y bueno, hubo conocidos que me hablaban por privado, pero no en público, y otros que dejaron de hablarme directamente y aún otros que antes de dejar de hablarme, pues me mandaron mensajes condenatorios para dejar claro que me despreciaban. Yo sufrí también una merma de mi salud mental y física, por supuesto, no extrañará saber que enfrentarse a ese nivel de estrés pues provoca insomnio, nerviosismo, me provocó también unos intensos dolores musculares que en principio no tenían explicación médica. También yo sufrí desconcierto porque después de pasarme esto, yo me encontré con una especie de limbo ideológico en el que pasaron cosas curiosas, ¿vale? Por ejemplo, en programas de izquierdas se me insultaba, en programas de derechas se me invitaba a hablar. Mujeres feministas me criticaron duramente sin embargo, influencers de la manoesfera me defendieron. O sea, yo estaba como desconcertada Por lo visto, yo ya no era feminista, ni progresista, ni defensora de los derechos de los gays o las lesbianas, ni de izquierdas. Yo era como una fascista de la peor calaña, sin haber gaseado a ninguna persona no binaria, por supuesto. Y es una sensación muy rara percibir que para reafirmar la identidad de una minoría, la mía tuviera que destrozarse en mil pedazos, ¿no? Y luego los mismos políticos que para sacar adelante las propuestas que les interesa pactan hasta con el diablo, cuando vieron que yo, por ejemplo, acudí a un medio de izquierdas para explicarme, de derechas, perdón, para explicarme cómo es la COPE, pues decían, ¿veis cómo las TERF son fascistas? No sé, es que es como que encuentran inaceptable que las mujeres feministas nos expresemos donde sea que se nos permita, ¿no? Para descalificarte no tienen en cuenta tus argumentos, sino donde los expresas, mientras te cierran sus micros y sus teatros. O sea, por lo visto, yo me tendría que haber quedado en un rincón muriéndome de pena y de inanición, y aún así no lo hubiera hecho bien, porque para hacer las cosas bien parece que hay que ser un hombre, ¿verdad? Luego yo perdí también mi reputación. Yo llevo 23 años haciendo comedia y a lo largo de estos años pues me he ido generando una reputación que, bueno, yo no es que sea una cómica muy conocida, pero bueno, pues imagínate, si cuando hablan mal de ti en tu grupo de yoga o en la tienda del barrio te sienta mal, imagina cómo se siente ver tu reputación manchada en medios de alcance nacional. O sea, mi nombre se arrastró por el fango, lo que se llama la falacia del envenenamiento del pozo, ¿no? O sea, se te llama transfoba y ya solo con eso se desprestigia cualquier cosa que tú puedas decir o hacer, aunque hayas dedicado toda tu carrera a hablar sobre los derechos de las mujeres. Luego otra cosa que me pasó, otro de los latigazos fue la pérdida de la autoestima. Porque cuando recibes rechazo masivo es difícil no creer que todos piensan que eres despreciable y que hay algo de verdad ahí. O sea, de alguna manera eso se te impregna y acabas dudando de ti. O sea, y eso te pasa una factura. Yo durante un tiempo estuve avergonzada, me relacionaba desde esa vergüenza. A la hora de buscar trabajo, por ejemplo, pues eso me influyó, porque no es lo mismo proponerte en un teatro o en una sala de comedia siendo cómica que proponerte cuando eres la cómica transfoba, que es el San Benito que se me puso y que aún hoy colea, ¿no? Por suerte ya no siento esa vergüenza que sentía y ahora, después de pasar por esta situación, de haber sido capaz de sostenerme entre tanta mentira y descalificación, pues yo siento un orgullo íntimo por ser quien soy. Y bueno, y ahora pasamos como a la segunda parte de esta ponencia, que es Tras la tormenta. Os he explicado lo que pasó y ahora lo que quiero decir es que está muy bien hacer recuento de los daños y memoria de quién los causó, pero nos toca asumir que quizá nunca vamos a recibir una disculpa, que nadie nos va a resarcir del maltrato que nos dieron, ¿no? Así que una tiene que ir recopilando información y hacer todo lo que haya que hacer, mientras también se hace cargo de su propia recuperación. Entonces yo creo que para mí lo importante de esta experiencia no es haber sobrevivido a esa violencia, sino llegar al final habiendo sido fiel a mí misma, habiendo hecho y dicho lo que yo sentía y lo que quería decir, y recuperando por completo mi salud, mi fuerza, mi alegría y mis ganas de expresarme. O sea, entonces, para hacerlo he tenido que aprender algunas cosas y las he recopilado por si alguna vez me vuelve a pasar algo parecido, poder leerlas y que me sirva, y también por si les puede servir a alguien que se encuentre en una situación parecida, ¿vale? Entonces, he escrito algo así como un manual de supervivencia para feministas insumisas. El primer punto sería, recuerda que eres feminista. O sea, las feministas siempre se han enfrentado en múltiples ocasiones con una potente resistencia social, con el escándalo y con el señalamiento, por defender derechos básicos de las mujeres, ¿no? O sea, ahora enfrentamos todo eso por decir que el sexo existe y que es importante. Si eres feminista, formas parte de un grupo de pioneras que no suelen ser bien entendidas ni bien tratadas. Entiende esa reacción machista como gajes del oficio y siéntete orgullosa por tu valentía al encararlo. Otro punto sería, otra cosa de las que he aprendido es que lo malo y lo bueno siempre vienen juntos. Y si tú quieres mantenerte sana y con energía para continuar con tu importante tarea, debes elegir con sabiduría dónde vas a centrar tu atención. Lo mejor es no dar crédito a los mensajes negativos, aunque sean muchos y muy llamativos. O sea, céntrate en los positivos. Atesora los mensajes de ánimo, de cariño y de admiración que también vas a recibir. Haz inventario frecuente de las cosas buenas que las situaciones críticas traen consigo, por pequeñas que sean. Agradece el amor de tus incondicionales, agradece tu propia valentía al mantenerte firme y expresarte en un mundo que te quiere callada y empequeñecida. O sea, agradece el apoyo de las mujeres feministas. Practicar el agradecimiento es la forma más efectiva de ejercitar tu libertad de atención. Cerrar los ojos y repasar esas cosas por las que estás agradecida, no tienen por qué ser grandes cosas, es una forma de disciplinar el pensamiento que te da foco, entrena tu visión y te permite vivir una vida centrada en lo positivo. La tercera cosa es que lo que más importa de todo es lo que te dices a ti misma. O sea, los mensajes negativos en redes sociales y en medios de comunicación tienen mucha fuerza, sobre todo porque cuando los lees, lo estás haciendo con tu voz. O sea, pueden hundirte psicológicamente porque parece que te estés diciendo todas esas cosas a ti misma. Y eso tiene un impacto terrible en la autoestima y por lo tanto en la fuerza con la que seguimos adelante y continuamos con nuestra misión, que la verdad que es importante. Así que las opiniones ajenas tienen poco que hacer si en tu cabeza resuenan palabras de amor propio. Es muy importante que en momentos críticos escribas en un folio cosas buenas sobre ti. Las leas repetidamente a lo largo del día y en especial al despertarte y al acostarte. Si tú no encuentras palabras para hacerlo, pídele a alguien que te quiera que escriba esas cosas por ti. Pero es muy importante, créeme, que en momentos de dudas te recuerdes a ti misma quién eres. Estas son algunas de las frases que yo me repito con frecuencia, sobre todo en épocas críticas. Yo soy buena persona. Yo soy valiente. Yo soy capaz de ver tras las máscaras. Yo soy digna de amor. Y a veces las leo y hasta lloro de la falta que me hace escucharlas dentro de mí. ¿Vale? Otra cosa importante, el cuarto punto, cambia la perspectiva. Por un lado está lo que nos pasa y por otro lado está lo que nos explicamos acerca de lo que nos pasa, ¿no? O de por qué nos pasa lo que nos pasa. Ante una misma realidad podemos darnos distintas explicaciones y las dos pueden ser ciertas, pero es importante que elijas una explicación que te llene de poder y que rechaces aquellas que te hagan sentir como con pena de ti misma, ¿no? O sea, para mí supuso un cambio muy importante, cambiar el no merezco esto que me pasa, es injusto, yo no he hecho nada malo para que me traten así, y aun siendo verdad, yo lo cambié por pensar, las pioneras valientes suelen enfrentar situaciones exigentes como esta, lo estoy haciendo muy bien y voy a seguir adelante. Encontrar una narrativa interior que me sirviera, me devolvió el poder que perdí durante un tiempo, hizo crecer mi autoestima, pues simplemente al saberme capaz de enfrentarme con éxito a lo que la mayoría de los seres humanos temen, que es a la crítica masiva y al rechazo social por ser fiel a mis ideas. Vale. Otra cosa súper importante sería el quinto, es deshazte de la ira reprimida. Es normal sentir ira cuando te tratan así de mal. Es normal y nos sobran ocasiones. Pero la ira que no expresas o la que no transformas se acumula en el cuerpo y se convierte en dolor físico y en enfermedad. En mi caso, se convirtió en dolores musculares muy intensos que ya por suerte no tengo, que no tenían explicación mecánica ni médica. O sea, yo iba al médico, me miraron de todo, no sabían decirme qué me pasaba. Y me despertaba con dolores, bueno, fue un sufrimiento, la verdad, que no se lo deseo a nadie. Entonces, muchas de nosotras nos pasa esto. Yo hablo con muchas mujeres y sé que muchas pues tenemos dolores de cabeza, insomnio, inflamación asociada al dolor crónico, problemas como artritis. Bien. Que a las mujeres no se nos permita expresar nuestra justa ira es una manera muy cruel de condenarnos al dolor y a la enfermedad. La buena noticia es que podemos dejar salir la ira sin que ni siquiera se dé nadie cuenta. ¿Cómo? Pues aquí van algunas ideas. Escribe cómo te sientes. Escribes cómo te sientes, todo vale. Tus deseos de venganza, la enorme rabia que te da tal o cual situación, ver cómo personas que te han tratado fatal medran en su desarrollo público, ¿no? O sea, todo lo que es, cualquier cosa, lo que harías si no tuvieras que enfrentar consecuencias penales. No lo publiques, solo escríbelo, lo escribes en un folio y luego lo rompes en mil pedazos o lo quemas. Y los malos deseos, esa ira se irá haciendo cada vez más pequeña hasta desaparecer conforme tú le vayas dando salida. Grita, practica deporte, baila, respira conscientemente, medita, usa la creatividad y en cualquier cosa que te haga pasar el mayor tiempo posible en el presente, en vez de estar pensando en todas las afrentas que has recibido, que han sido un montón, o preocupándote con el futuro, a ver si vas a poder ser capaz de sostener tus ideas y de pagar la hipoteca. La sexta, nunca jamás hagas a otros, esto me lo tengo que recordar yo con mucha frecuencia, nunca jamás hacer a otros lo que no me lo que no me gustó que me hicieran a mí. Cuando tenemos o creemos tener razón, nos comportamos a veces en formas muy injustas. Si yo no puedo controlar cómo los demás se comportaron conmigo, ¿no? Cuando creyeron que tenían razón. Lo que sí que puedo hacer es vigilar cómo me comporto yo cuando creo que tengo razón yo y bueno, por ejemplo, permitir que los demás se expresen, aunque no me gusten nada sus ideas, si me parecen inaceptables, ofrecer datos y argumentos, pero nunca insultos o cancelación, ¿vale? Y nunca jamás confundir daños reales con ofensas del ego. Y el último punto sería express yourself. O sea, la expresión es el lugar por el que desaparece el tabú y se esfuma el miedo. Sigue hablando. Si entiendes que las redes sociales no son el mejor espacio para hacerlo, spoiler, no lo son, pues busca otros espacios más seguros y rentables, pero nunca jamás dejes de expresarte. No te silencies a ti misma. Eso es lo que los machistas de ayer y los de hoy desean que hagas, que te calles de una puta vez, no les des el gusto, por favor. Exprésate tal y como eres, porque eso te pone en el sitio en el que tienes que estar y te rodea de las personas de las que te tienen que rodear, porque las crisis sirven para que lo ilusorio desaparezca. Las amigas falsas, los que solo te querían por si podían sacar algo de ti, eso es basura. Y lo que hay que hacer con la basura es tirarla sin pena ninguna. O sea, y además expresándote mandas a las demás y a ti misma un mensaje muy poderoso que es que no hay nada malo en ti, nada malo en ti, nada que esconder. Todo lo que eres mereces ser compartido. Y ya para acabar, unas ideas finales. Yo considero que es muy importante que las mujeres hablemos de nuestras cosas. Por eso agradezco tanto espacios como este. Tenemos derecho a hablar de nuestras cosas, de nuestros temas, de nuestros espacios y tenemos derecho a nuestras conversaciones exclusivas. Además, nuestros asuntos son muy importantes para la humanidad. La prostitución, la esclavitud doméstica, la pornografía, bueno, tenemos muchos frentes abiertos. El elemento de lo trans ha sido perjudicial, pero también ha puesto las cosas en su sitio, las ha clarificado. Vivíamos en una ilusión morada y de repente, igual que me pasó a mí, las feministas hemos visto que no teníamos tantos amigos, que muchos de los que estaban a nuestro lado parecía estar esperando realmente a poder lanzarnos su desprecio a la cara. Poder ver mejor no es algo malo, siempre y cuando no temas y sigas hablando. Hablar de ello es la manera en la que este desastre se acabará y se tiene que acabar porque es peligroso para las mujeres y para la infancia. Y ya quiero acabar con una frase del poeta indio Tagore que a mí me ayudó mucho a cambiar la perspectiva en el momento en el que estaba sufriendo este escándalo tan desproporcionado. La frase dice así: la verdad levanta contra ella misma el vendaval que ha de esparcir sus semillas. Y a veces es necesario el escándalo para que reluzca la verdad y deberíamos sentirnos afortunadas de ser el lugar por el que la verdad puede pasar. Muchas gracias, ha sido un placer.
Quería darte las gracias por tu participación
A vosotras.
y tienes mensajes de apoyo a mogollón en el chat para que los puedas leer, y un abrazo te manda también Juana Gallego que está en el chat también, que te sigue mucho en redes. I was explaining to Patricia that she's having comforting messages and support messages in the chat should she want to read them. And she also has been getting support from Spanish feminists that are on the chat today. I have to say, because maybe I didn't say this in the introduction, that Patricia, she is very funny. So as a comedian, she always makes us laugh. We were having a show by her a couple of weeks ago, and it was so funny. We ended up, our cheekbones were hurting at the end because we were laughing so hard. So it's a shame for those of you that who do not speak Spanish. You will miss her, but for all those of you who could speak Spanish, so I invite you and I suggest you to follow her because she's extremely funny and very, very insightful with her feminist topics and comments in her shows. Moving on, thank you again, Patricia. We're going to hear from Lara Forsberg, as I said before. Lara is an academic in education who had experienced an activist environment within the university and in sports, and who saw that the psychological support for the student was fragmented and replaced with the ulterior motives of disorganized teachers. Curriculum that is bound in woke political activism destroys the natural development and security of the student. When the rights of the student are secondary to the activism of poorly developed adults, entire cultures become broken. Thank you very much for this very interesting introduction, Lara. I'm looking forward listening to your talk, which is titled Gender Identity in Schools. Thank you again, and over to you.
So I'm from Canada, and in Alberta, we have really become a strong group with WDI. Canada is overrun with transgender ideology in the schools and the sports. I played roller derby. 10 years ago, I started roller derby, and that's when it started to really come in strong. Fortunately, in Alberta, we have Daniel Smith, who has done a few laws protecting women in sports, for example. There's old men swimming with young girls. There's my after I quit roller derby because they were trans and kids right in front of me, I started doing martial arts and Taekwondo. My sensei has just recently decided that he's a woman, so I withdrew myself and my son from that and told them exactly why. It's misogynist. It's anti-gay. Children putting on dangerous hormones and surgeries. So they need to know that this is not okay. Daniel Smith has also gotten explicit books out of school. I've gone undercover and looked at some of the tools they're putting into schools for transgender, and that's a little bit on my slide. Do you want to open my slides? So I did a guideline for a counter narrative to the affirmative model, and Michelle Cretella from the American College of Pediatricians wrote the first part of it, talking about the basics of puberty blockers in the Dutch study, intersex not being the same as trans. I also had Linda Blade, who's really well known. She wrote a book about the trans attack in sports, and she talks about how learned helplessness happens as a result of men and boys being in women's sports. Next slide. I wrote an article for PIT, which is Parents with Inconvenient Truths, because as I was writing the guideline, my own daughter started to take interest in the furry aspect of it, wearing cute cat ears, which was at a time all right, but it's got a deeper sexual and devious element to it now. So we had moved recently. I had also been a working mom, so there were some things that my daughter was lacking for her own needs, in her specific developmental needs. So right from my own guideline, I was able to decipher what my daughter needed. Next slide. So we have different developmental stages, and if these stages aren't met, then problems will happen, but we can go back even as adults and get those needs met. Patricia talked about affirmations. So I use transactional analysis, psychotherapy, to start to look at the deeper issues. We have different areas of the parent, the adult, and the child. Next slide. So depending on how you're parenting your child, different needs are met or not met. So a marshmallowing parent, which I would be in that category when I wasn't doing well, was I would be very nice and let them fail. Like, oh, you don't have to do your homework. Let's just hang out on the couch and cuddle. That's really getting my needs met. So a nurturing parent is more supportive and caring. And that's when I showed the ego states. Marshmallowing is ineffectual. Structuring, protecting is very important. And this is where I started to really step it up. My daughter needed me to be around more and help her with the rules. Criticizing parents, ridicules, tear downs, tells children to fail. And next slide. And so what I needed to do was get myself in order. And so psychotherapy is a way to do that. So I wrote a guideline to tell parents and myself how to be the parent that the child needs at the right developmental stage. Next slide. So these are the stages, and these are the affirmations that I use. And stage 1 is red, stage 2 is yellow, and so on and so forth. So these are affirmations I can check and make sure that I am feeling. So I was a marshmallow parent as a result of being a latchkey kid. So there were times maybe I wasn't getting the affirmations I need. So I need to go back and look after my needs so that I'm organized while I'm parenting my children. Next slide. One of these affirmations, like for being, is I'm glad you're here. There's jobs of the adolescent that I have in my guideline that are very specific. And if we know what the job of the adolescent is, we could be more clear about what we're giving them. Next slide. So that's a lot written there, but stage 6, identity, sexuality and separation. This is actually a form of psychotherapy, but it goes along with what Patricia was saying in that if our needs aren't met, there's things we can do. So unhelpful parenting behaviors at this stage would be unresponsive, uncaring behavior, withholding loving touch, respond sexually to adolescence development and sexual maturity. Cues that an adult, a parent needs, that they need to do some growing up again, would be a preoccupation with sex, body, clothes, appearance, friends, sex roles, and a way that I can help myself, for example, or anyone, write an essay starting what I want to do most to accomplish in my life. I know that's a lot, but it's just an example of some of the things that are in my guideline. Next slide. So one unhelpful parenting behaviors at this stage is, as I blew that up a bit more because it's very important. We don't want to withhold loving touch because a child has reached adolescence. We also don't want to respond sexually. We don't want to use rigid rules or no rules or non-enforced rules or refusal to negotiate rules. We need to expect children to be thinking and problem solving. Cruelty and teasing about sexual interests. That was something that happened when I was growing up in the 70s. It was common to tease kids. Fail fantasies, dreams, appearance or friends, cruelty about those things and sexuality. Another negative would be failing to confront destructive, self-defeating behaviors, anything from drug abuse to limited friends and interests. Attempts to keep child from separating. No, I wish you would never grow up. These are not the right affirmations to be giving children. So the reason why I looked into psychotherapy is because believing you're going to be an identity that you possibly never, ever will achieve. I mean, there's no way. You could be a tomboy, but you could never be a boy. And not knowing that creates a script that is a negative script. Where's that going to lead eventually? That leads to suicide as a result for many of these people from botched surgeries and hormones. We want children to live a livable script that leads to good things. A mask of identity, all children try these masks on. This is all part of normal development, but where will it lead eventually is what has to be imprinted on the child. And discounting. So a child says, I'm not feeling good about my friends. Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Next slide. The way I dealt with my daughter was I started to homeschool and build a better bond and show her how to get through her homework, but also get her in a friendship group. It's important at this age, when my daughter's 12, that she starts finding girl friendship groups. Boys need to find boy friendship groups. Girls need to be affirmed as girls. Boys need to be affirmed as boys. We need to tell them about sex and not just hope that if you give them the pill and explain the mechanics of sex and say, go to it, that things are going to be fine. Girls need to know that there's going to be regret. She might get a sexual transmitted disease. Sex too early can be a preoccupying thing, leaving little energy for her personal growth and getting past her next developmental stage. Relationship skills can be subsumed by sexual excitement. Easy sex and immature adolescent game playing may infringe on a girl's search for identity. She may become busy taking care of sexual needs of others. She may forget what her needs are. These are practical reasons that we're not taught as parents to tell our children regarding, especially girls, regarding sex. There's pregnancy. There's when normal development, adolescent normal development is postponed when she's preoccupied with sex. Later, she may want to recapture those lost teenage experiences, interfering with adult tasks. And we would call that a failure to develop to the next stage. Next slide. So I went undercover at the LS, I can't even these words, stories, lesson 1 from the archives of gay history. And this is what is being put in the schools right now. And Brody, the man who is showing all these artifacts was in fact a transgender. And what I noticed very starkly is that the transgender movement is heavily riding on the gay movement. So you'll see in one of his slides that they talk about the early gay magazines, what to do when arrested, or How Now My Love was the name of the article in the 1970s. We have official arrest reports of men who were arrested for being in bathhouses, a photograph of the Brunswick Four, which is women, lesbians, and the interesting thing about them is all they were doing was telling a joke to get arrested, whereas the men were in bathhouses at the height of the AIDS epidemic, which is a serious safety concern. And yet that element isn't brought out to the schools. It's just a very sexually charged slide, and I feel it's very inappropriate for children. But you could see with the women, all they had to do was tell a joke, which was sing the song, I Enjoy Being a Dyke, and they got arrested. Whereas the men in the bathhouses were doing serious public safety concerns. So when I decided to help my daughter, I had to look at what I was doing that was impeding her development. And that was, I was very focused on work. An example of how I could grow up again is to look at, do I have a preoccupation with sex, body, clothes, appearance, friends, sex roles? Am I unsure of my own values and vulnerable to peer pressure? Do I have problems with starting and ending jobs, roles, and relationships? Do I have overdependence or alienation from family and others? Do I show irresponsibility, troublemaking, and keeping commitments? Like I said before, these are issues I need to address. Michelle, in the first part of my guideline, talks about how family therapy has been the key element for these children overcoming these issues. So it's really important that psychotherapy is looked at. The reason why this guideline, not only so that we have a counter argument to the affirmation model, but it's also so that I can understand psychotherapy. So we have charts that show if you're feeling this, then here's some wonderful affirmations you can give yourself that would fit the developmental stage that you maybe needed to catch up on. So my mother and father got divorced when I was a teenager. I have to catch up on these things. These are problems that I need to deal with in order to model them appropriately to my daughter. One thing I did when I was undercover at this trans and gay classroom source was that I did confront them about puberty blockers. I talk in a question about how women's sports have been targeted and that women who speak out get death threats. Now, I didn't get a very prominent response to that. I got dismissal, but the point was I was the only one who asked the question. And what happened immediately after I asked the question was that someone got on their phone and they said, I'm driving, but I had to respond to this question. I think people just say facts instead of asking questions. So that was directly related at me. So what that listener was doing was jumping in and being a savior to the speaker, the trans-identified male. Next slide. That brings on an element of transactional analysis, which is what the guideline is based on, where it's an ongoing script. There's a persecutor, there's the rescuer, and the victim. So what that rescuer, that listener was doing by jumping on the phone was making me the persecutor and Brody, the trans-identified male, the victim. And that would have kept going on and on forever if I would allow it. There's also the bystander position, which is if you're watching this kind of bullying go on, you're responsible as well. And I also call that the complicit researcher. When we have researchers such as NHS wanting to do another study in Britain, there's just no way that they're not culpable in some way. So my question was, the most famous lesbians of 2017 was Julia Beck, who was forced out of her advising role in Baltimore on the board, the LGBTQ board, when she took offense to men being put in women's prisons. How do you navigate this paradigm where female athletes and lesbians such as Julia Long, Leah Keith, and Julia Beck assert that trans women are men? How do you encourage critical discussions on puberty blockers and the WPATH files, which addresses the poor quality of evidence of trans medicine? Finally, how do you navigate the discussion when female students voice concern for other females who are beaten by boys and, having opposed this unfairness may experience death threats when asserting their experience in sports? So what I did was I stepped out of the complicit researcher bystander position when I was doing this undercover research. And that's what needs to happen, is they can't be allowed to just say these things. We must have a way to counteract that and be willing to counteract that. Next slide. So this is from the transgender outcomes that family therapy is key, as well as group therapy. So in stage 1, children need structure, and they learn through that structure to go on to the next stage. So many trans-identified children did not get the structure they needed. Like I knew that my daughter wasn't getting the structure she needed or the unconditional love that she needed. So this very key study shows that the males started noticing people became uncomfortable around them. They had a rising guilt and shame at the sustaining that deception. They had a lack of meaningful physical intimacy. And there was the harm that the hormones and surgeries were causing. They maybe wanted to have kids later. They noticed the trans community has many dysfunctional people. Increasing self-awareness around antisocial behaviors and narcissistic beliefs, and wanting to distance themselves from radical trans women. Other life goals became more important. So there was a definite maturity. We know that many women especially desist once they reach the early 20s and 30s because they've simply matured. And then for the men, there was also a renewed appreciation for what masculinity really is, that it can be healthy and enabling. For the females, they realized they were living a lie. They missed being genuinely authentic. That's not reliant on medications and surgeries. They found they were exhausted from the stress of living to conform to this groupthink, and that passing is not enough. It triggers worth aesthetics like balding and longing for genuine emotional life again, maturing out of other mental health challenges, lacking physical intimacy, again, the iatrogenic harm. They wanted to retain the option to have kids and to escape being perceived as a butch lesbian, unfortunately. They felt remorse for neglecting other females, awareness of feminist solidarity. Next slide. So with my daughter, I was having a lot of conflict. She called me transphobic. She knew I was on this path to prevent children from getting harm, but she also saw me as being an ist, a transphobic, a racist, all these things that they're taught in school to be very fearful of. And what I noticed is these girls who do try to be trans men, they become more and more depressed. In roller derby, the men became happier and happier. They're winning, they're doing great, they're smashing bodies around. But the girls who tried to identify as men became more and more disillusioned and depressed. And there were 2 suicides in my tenured term in roller derby of girls who are identifying as boys. So it's important that we stand up to this opposing viewpoint, but do it in the right way. So we think win-win, carrying conflict. Don't discount the importance of conflict and growth. Conflict is necessary for development. When conflict with an important issue happens, use a nurturing parent ego state and positive strokes. So that's good attention. Never discount the importance of an issue. Good groups have more positive statements than negative ones. Be assertive, not aggressive. Stay in the now. Avoid lecture. Stay with the concrete, specific behavioral details. Use I messages and avoid judgments. Be rigorously honest. Don't assign blame. Don't argue over the details. Use active listening. Fight about one thing at a time. Go for a solution, not being right, and hang in there unless you're being abused. Next slide. So in conclusion, my guideline wants to let you know what the important developmental stages are, what children need at those developmental stages, what to do if you as a parent feel that you haven't overcome developmental stages, such as wanting to wear funky clothes and have funky friends. That's a lack of development, and what you can do to get over that lack of development. So you're revisiting stages for yourself when your needs were not met. Revisit needs and reparent the self. And children will benefit from reworking and revisiting stages where more work is needed, and also use an authoritative style and a nurturing parent ego state rather than a marshmallow or critical parent ego state. And that's my slides. Oh, I just want to add that it's important to also give girls a chance to compete in sports on a fair field. I'm quite upset that I can't play roller derby. I'm quite upset that I can't do martial arts. I do have my daughter in gymnastics, and it's really helpful for her. But it's an unsafe world in sports right now. Daniel Smith has been able to get men out of and boys out of sports on the level of track and field, but not in private clubs such as rugby or roller derby. So we still have a long way to go. And thanks for listening to my talk.
Thank you very much, Lara. There was a lot of information. I will have to go back again because there were so many things that sometimes you need more to visualize some talk.
I'll just put my link in the guideline to the link to the guideline in the chat.
Fantastic. And I'm very sorry that I said that you were from the USA. You're in Canada, and you're from Alberta, where our fantastic coach Blade is also doing great work raising awareness. So this is very important what you were saying, because this is a topic that is so wide that it affects women in so many ways. The mothers, the teachers, students themselves, so the sports issue. We're going to hear from prisons, I guess, from our next guest. So this is so huge that we cannot be specialized in every angle. So providing us this very specific points of view that could be very helpful for other women experiencing same situation as you were having with your daughter, aside from your own activism. So I think this is very helpful, and that many people are going to benefit from your presentation today. Thank you very much. So now we are going to hear from Amie Ichikawa. She was incarcerated at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla for 5 years, and then she realized there's a major lack of reentry services for women and limited accessibility to those available services upon release. She's one of the founding members of Woman to Woman, a great organization whose goal is to empower incarcerated women to stand up for themselves and become actively involved in campaigning for their own freedom. And she has been also focusing very thoroughly on the very dangerous issue that there are trans-identified men sharing those spaces with women. So Amie is going to tell us about why she signed the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights. Thank you very much, Amie, for being here with us today, and over to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. Are my glasses? Is this blurry? Okay. Good day, good morning, good Saturday. First of all, I can't even believe that I get to do this stuff. So thank you. I signed the declaration thanks to Lara, pretty much. You know, I always considered myself pretty smart. I have a pretty broad vocabulary, and I really didn't understand misogyny, though. And it wasn't until I was in a meeting with Wolf, and Lara said, well, misogyny is your whole life. And it hit me like a freight train. The reality that people don't just randomly hate me. There's actually people that hate all women. And it was devastating and liberating at the same time. And one thing I think is really important for us to do is to get the declaration inside the prisons. I think making sure we educate the women inside and arm them with the same tools that I was given is going to be monumental in this battle to get the men out of the women's prisons, primarily because they have to be the ones to initiate this. They have to be the ones who stand up for themselves, because right now, like in California, I sound like a maniac because there's so little information coming from the women directly to corroborate the stories that I'm telling, that people can easily write off the things I say. But that's why, you know, I've branched out a lot more. I am in touch with a lot more women in a lot of other states and federal prisons as well. But that is why I signed. I signed because that specific situation. And after reading it, how can you not sign it? It makes no sense to not sign it. And I think if I was to distribute this to some of the more awake, in tune women, they could pass it around to women who are ready for this, to avoid, you know, being hit with the whole, this is propaganda and you're going to go to jail in prison type of situation. And I mean, I think we could do this internationally. This is just something that they need in their toolkit in order to dig themselves out of this horrible hole that they're in. Which brings me to, there are a couple of stories I want to share recently. And it's been a really busy month. First, it's way worse than I thought. It's a lot worse than I thought. A couple months ago, I went inside of CCWF, Chowchilla, the same prison I paroled from. I was invited to go to a day of healing with another organization, to my surprise, because no organizations in California will work with me. So I was really touched. It's amazing. It's miraculous. Because last time I had checked, I wasn't even supposed to go into the facility. So this day of healing was very different. There was a sound bath followed by a tea ceremony. And, you know, I was able to spend the entire day with my friends. And I had no idea how much I needed it too. You know, I'm walking in, and it's always surreal. It's always a surreal experience to go back into the prison. And I see some of my friends, and I got kind of scared because we're not that young anymore. My friends are getting old in there. And the thought of them getting any older and more vulnerable is kind of unbearable, considering the circumstances. Anyway, we all had our, you know, we were slapped around with lavender and it was very soothing. And, you know, we had a sound bath, and I was like, this is amazing, because this is what I had always hoped for them. And we lay down, and I'm laying in between, you know, two of my most favorite people. And I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and I was like, I love you guys. And they were like, we love you too. And I fell asleep instantly. I woke up an hour later, and I was like, wow, was I snoring? They said, no, you're just a little bear. So I really needed that. Who goes to prison to take a nap? I guess I do. But the most moving part of the day was the tea ceremony. I didn't realize how important that was going to be at all. I was in a group with a few lifers that I had never met before. And I, you know, I cry for everything. So I'm trying to be serious and not, you know, overly emotional and respective of the space. And I wasn't looking at anybody else. So I was just trying to focus on the tea and the whole ceremony. And I looked up, and after like the third round of tea, the woman sitting across from me was just like projectile tears were falling from her eyes. And I was like, oh no, this is so bad. They need so much relief. The oppression is so heavy in there, just not being able to even think. They can't talk. They can't trust the people that go in there that are supposed to be advocating for them. And it's the same women that used to walk the yard with us. They are more broken than they were when they got there. It was really intense. I just automatically felt the the wound in her soul. It was terrible. So it gets worse. And we have a circle. We're talking, and I'm in a circle with people that I was in prison with, and somebody who you know, she was always, she didn't seem like a vulnerable person when I was there. She was always strong, always fighting, always in trouble, you know. But you know, she's an adult now, and she said, I have been sexually abused since I got here when I was 21, and I'm gonna go home soon, and I've been here over 20 years. And I was like, what? She said, I was molested my whole life, and I never understood, you know, why anybody would want to touch me. I never had any self-esteem. And this is a beautiful, beautiful woman. And she said, when I first got here, an officer started touching me, and I was like, no, because I had really not understood the horridness of the power imbalance there. When someone is able to wield power over you, it really is horrible. It's horrible. What do you do when a staff member touches you? Do you tell? You can't tell. What do you do? And she said it was just another one and another one and another one, because it's a horrible, like, over familiar gang. It was, you know, this guy's cousin, this guy's brother-in-law, this guy's neighbor. And she said, you know, up until just 2, maybe 3 years ago, she was still being used and abused. And you compound that with having to go to your cell, and there's, you know, a convicted sex offender in there. There's absolutely no, it is trafficking. It is totally trafficking. And a lot of you know, my partners out here who are survivors of trafficking have said the state is trafficking our sisters inside. This is just so much worse than I ever imagined, because I didn't think how much worse can it get. But this is, it is worse. They're so broken. It's going to take a lot to reverse. Well, I don't think it can ever be reversed. I really think this is irreversible damage, but I think we can help them heal on some level. I think the education is going to be a key point in helping them. It's so important because it made a huge difference in my life. And it still continues to be very important. Second, there's a lot of women who hate women too. Unfortunately, I just was at Chowchilla last week picking up a 71-year-old woman who was found suitable for parole after 21 years. And, you know, I knew, they said she has a wheelchair now. She has a wheelchair and a walker. You have to bring a big enough car. I thought, okay, that's fine. But I was taken aback when they brought her out. Because she was so mangled, and only one leg worked. And I said, what? Well, hello. And she's like, hi, let me just get in the car. And she starts crawling in the car like a wounded animal because she just wanted to get out. And I was like, well, I'm really glad to see you. What the hell happened to you? And she said, well, you know, can we just get out of the parking lot? I said, yes. So we're jamming out of the parking lot, and we had already had a really rough morning. You know, the cops didn't tell us there was a new procedure that we had to check in. So we're waiting. We were there at 7:30, and they didn't bring her out till 11. So she said when she got her hip replacement, there was a nurse that was pushing her in her wheelchair, and there were no footrests on the wheelchair, and she was pushing her really fast. And she said, please stop, and her foot got caught under the wheelchair, and the lady kept pushing, and her femur snapped. And I was like, oh no. oh what I didn't have any words to really at that point, because this lady is 71 years old, and this just happened last year. And the femur is the strongest bone in the human body. How hard was this lady pushing her for it to break? and she's 71 years old. So, what is she going to do? Be a construction worker? She's very limited as far as, um, employment's going to go. Luckily, she has an amazing son who I got the privilege of hearing their first conversation, her being free. And I was crying, just ugly face crying. He was like, Mama, this is the best day of my life. I've been waiting for this for 21 years. And I was like, oh. So that's another issue. They're just under assault from every single angle, medically, from men, from women, politically, even our own friends, our own people, the ones that are supposed to be advocating for them, which brings me into this story. There's a woman who is actually a declarant in the Wolf lawsuit against, SB 132. And she was a very amazing source of information up until she paroled recently. And she served 25 years. I think we're the same age. And I had a feeling, I don't have the financial means to provide an alternative to the other organizations. I just have hopes and prayers. So I knew if they offered her money that she was going to go to the opposition. But nothing really prepared me for the depths, how low the other organizations will go to prevent people from talking to me. It's really bad. They're like, there's an administrator, one of the executive one, they're sleeping with her. This is how demented and how threatened they are by, I guess, the truth and the things that I say. This is how far they'll go to keep our own people away from me. I guess she was feeling guilty the other night, and she texted me and she said, I just want to apologize for not staying in touch, because you've always been there for me and I haven't been a good friend since I got out. And I said, look, I know you can't be my friend, and I get it. I get it. But I'm still here. And she said, oh, that just breaks my heart. And I said, well, it is what it is. So, this is what I'm up against. This is what we're up against. The pull with money, the funding, the clout. What do they do? They're at events with like Angela Davis and our different state representatives that are so not pro-woman, and they're women. And they just snatch them up as soon as they get out, especially if they have a strong voice or a good story to tell that is going to be marketable. They're getting them. And I just don't have the means to offer them anything else. So I have to strategize and start thinking with a business head instead of being, just a good friend. I have to start being tactical and getting statements and videos and recording things before they parole and before other people snatch them up. And I feel disgusting, because then I feel like I'm being exploitative as well. So I have to learn how to balance that. But all of that being said, I really think that we have to focus on moving forward. There can't be any legislation about us without us. And I don't just mean like any woman, because as I just said, there's women who hate women. So we really have to put a lot of effort towards the prison abolition movement. They don't like us either. They're in, well, at least in the States, the abolitionists are tied into they're pretty much with the trans agenda. It's very unfortunate. But there can't be any legislation about us without us. We We have to make sure that there are educated, female-centric minded women, feminists that are involved in every form of legislation that has anything to do with our bodies, our safety, anything. We have to completely infiltrate everything because they have, and it's been very effective in their mission to erase us. So we have to be slick about it too. This is a war, and as every day goes by, it becomes more apparent to me that this really is a battle for our right to simply exist, and we have to start attacking it as such, because this is go time. Like, this isn't a practice run. It's not a drill. This is real, and they're getting closer and closer. They're just checking off the points on their agenda that are being met rapidly. Scott Wiener is a great contributor to, completing the agenda. It's very disturbing how far it goes back, how long this has been in the works, and it's going to take us working triple over double time in order to catch up with that plan of action that's been set forth for decades. I used to think maybe it's not that serious, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I'm paranoid, but no, this is righteous paranoia. This is really happening, and there's no better place than the prison to know that this is something that the average individual in the free world is not going to be able to bear. It's the most, it's just like you have to exist with no air. The oppression that's inside of the prison walls is so heavy. And I don't want that to ever spill over into the free world. If we can collectively just stop it where it is and kill it inside those walls, then it's a win all around. But again, we have to educate them and give them the tools to defend themselves, because right now they just are so downtrodden, and they're being told things like, shut up and stop lying. And this is by people that were in prison with them before. So shut up and stop lying. Your commutations and pardons are being overlooked because of issues related to your transphobia. So this organization went in and told a group of women serving life, your applications for a pardon were thrown out because of your transphobia, which, loosely translated means you better stop talking to Amie or else you're never going home. And I tell them, it's freedom over everything. If you have to pretend like you're not my friend, I can do that. I can do that. It's fine with me. I just wish that they didn't have to. I wish that they didn't have to go through that. But I have some diehards that are like, we don't care. We're never going to be embarrassed or shy about the fact that we rock with you. There's an organization that even went in and told Tamikia Johnson, why are you talking to Amie Ichikawa? She's a white supremacist. And Tamikia said, you've seen her, right? You know who she is, right? And they said, well, white supremacy isn't a skin color, it's a state of mind. And she just got up from that meeting and left. But before she did, she said, I will never stop talking to Amie because she's the only one who really cares about us. And it's like she never left. So on the days that I feel like I can't keep going, I just have to remember those diehards, because even if it's just one left in there, I have to keep going for that one. But this is what we're up against, and it's a lot, and it sucks. And I just want to remind everybody, the deeper I've gotten into politics, the more I have come to realize that they all hate us in their own, different ways. They all hate us. So we really have to collectively come to the understanding that it's us against them. It's us against the agenda. And it breaks my heart when I see, the infighting or women politicizing what we have to do, because there is no place in politics that where we belong. We just have to figure out how we're going to be present on both sides so that we can be represented. But there is really no spot for us. We have to carve our own spots out. It's hard. It's hard, and it's a lot of work, and it seems really overwhelming. But knowing that, this is an international issue and we're all working on this together is very encouraging. And I can't explain enough how much I appreciate just the community of women that I've been so lucky to become a part of. I really never knew that there was so much work that still had to be done. I thought everything was done already. We can vote. We have our rights. No, we don't. It's been a facade. They bamboozled us. There has been like just a facade of forward motion when they've just been fooling us for years and years. So I'm ready to work, and I'm open to, working with anybody. I'm open to suggestions, partnerships, anything. But I do appreciate your time and the opportunity to talk to you ladies today. And I will answer as many questions as possible afterwards.
Just before moving to Jocelyn, I would like to tell you that it's not personal what they're doing to you, same as it was not personal with Patricia. Even if you were attacked personally, they are attacking you because you're in the way. If you were not there and there was some other woman, they would be trying to break that other woman's spirit. So it's you because you're there, because you're working and you're doing great. So that's it. So the harder they hit, they hit, it means the angrier they are at you because you're doing a great job. So in a way, they are complimenting you on your hard work by hating you so much. So even if your friends, for whatever reason, even stop talking to you, that would mean that they have done you would have created a lot of work for them. So it's you because you're there and you're working. So it's not personal. Don't feel bad. On the contrary. So now we're going to hear from Jocelyn Crawley. She's a radical feminist thinker who resides in Atlanta, Georgia. She enjoys thinking, talking, reading, and writing about strategies for resistance that women and girls can utilize to create worlds marked by subjectivity and self-actualization. Above all, she believes that the most radical acts a woman can engage is in reading radical literature. So Jocelyn Crawley, welcome. She's going to tell us about sexual assault as core to patriarchy. And welcome, and over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If I can have my first slide, please. All right, so today I'm operating according to the premise that sexual assault and other forms of sexual abuse are core to the patriarchy. Moving from that premise, if we accept it as true, we need to strategize regarding what we're going to do about the ongoing war against women and girls that takes place through the realm of sexual assault and sexual abuse. So the title of this presentation is Embracing Extended Culpability When Subjecting Rape Cases to a Radical Feminist Critique. Next slide, please. So what is meant with the term extended culpability? In context of the rape culture that female people are forced to live in, I coined the phrase extended culpability to refer to the process of blaming individuals and institutions that exist within communities where rape has transpired, given that these entities adversely impact the survivor's well-being and healing process. Furthermore, the phrase extended culpability conveys that we can unabashedly and unapologetically talk about how horrible rape is in context of the depravity of the rapist and the depravity of the individuals and institutions that support his heinous acts. In discussing community failures as they transpired in context of Daisy Coleman's rape, Safe Bay co-founder Shale Norris told The Sun that the Colemans endured substantive animosity from town members years after their loved one's attack. She also stated that if you don't have your community lifting you up and supporting you and helping you through hard times, that compounds everything. This statement reflects the principle of extended culpability that I will use to contextualize discourse regarding the rape of Daisy Coleman and the role that the community in which she lived played in exacerbating the pernicious impact that the sexual assault had on her. Next slide, please. Male supremacy, its creation of rape culture and feminist responses. As male supremacy continues to exist as the ruling religion of the world, a plethora of deleterious outcomes, including the acceptance of rape as an appropriate or inevitable practice, follow. As life under patriarchy continues to unfold, radical feminists all over the world work, think, act, and create in dissident ways which function as strategies for resistance. In recent years, antagonism towards the ongoing reality of rape culture has resulted in the emergence of an understanding that blaming the victim is oftentimes a socially normative response to the survivor's sexual assault. In recognizing this reality, many feminists and even anti-feminists have argued that blaming the rapist rather than blaming the victim is the appropriate response to sexual assault. I agree. However, I argue that blaming the rapist is not a sufficient radical feminist response because it does not incorporate awareness of the role that societal structures play in creating the conditions that are confluent to male domination and female submission. Therefore, in this presentation, I argue that it is important to continually produce discourse regarding the role that entire communities comprised of both individuals and institutions play in failing the victim. Doing so can provide key insights regarding how sexual assault exists within a patriarchal framework of subjugating realities which get to keep happening because of systemic support at the legal, social, and educational levels, to name a few. Next slide, please. So the rape case that I examined for this presentation was the rape of Daisy Coleman. So I want to give some background information regarding how this rape transpired. At the age of 14, Daisy Coleman was sexually assaulted by then 17-year-old Matthew Barnett while she was unconscious and intoxicated. The assault transpired at his home in January 2012. Her friend, Paige Parkhurst, was also sexually assaulted by another male. As Coleman explained, she and Paige had been drinking prior to sneaking out to Barnett's home. Upon arriving there, she was encouraged to drink even more and passed out. After the assault, Matthew Barnett and another male drove Daisy to her home. They then left the incapacitated Coleman on the porch in freezing temperatures. During the investigation, Barnett maintained that he and Coleman had consensual sex. Coleman, however, continually affirmed that Barnett raped her after she blacked out from excessive alcohol consumption. Next slide. I want to state for the record that an unconscious person cannot give consent. So irrespective of the language that proliferated during this rape trial, that the sex was consensual, it is agreed upon by many authorities who have no allegiance to radical feminism, even that an unconscious person cannot give consent. And therefore, the absence of capacity to consent therefore translates to a no, meaning that Daisy Coleman was indeed raped by Matthew Barnett. Next slide, please. How did Daisy Coleman's rape case evolve? Although Barnett was originally charged with a felony sexual assault, the case was dropped. The original prosecutor stated that the charges were dropped because the Coleman family was non-cooperative during the investigation. However, it has been argued that the charges were dropped due to Barnett's political connections. After the case was reopened, Barnett pled guilty to the misdemeanor child endangerment charge. The Colemans were subjected to more abuse from the community following Daisy's rape, including the burning down of their house. Additionally, following Barnett pleading guilty to the misdemeanor charge of endangering a child's welfare, Daisy's mother, Melinda Coleman, was fired from her job as a veterinarian. Next slide, please. So Daisy Coleman's case is a communal failure. Rape culture works by citing what the victim did wrong, with these cited wrongs functioning as evidence that the sexual assault was her fault. This logic works to render the rapist not guilty, which in turn delegitimates the need for him to experience repercussions at the legal, social, and/or economic level. Additionally, rape culture includes harassing and bullying the victim, realities which Coleman was subjected to in online and offline spaces. For example, the hashtags Daisy's a liar and I hate Daisy were created after this survivor came forward to speak her truth. Next slide, please. As noted by the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Coleman and other rape survivors have been subjected to intense harassment, bullying, disbelief, and blame after enduring their assault, while their perpetrators eluded meaningful justice or accountability for their actions. The multifaceted communal nature of antagonism towards Daisy thus becomes plain. In discussing this reality, Melissa Schumann stated, "I consider it passive murder. Every single person who harassed Daisy and her family is now guilty of contributing to her death. Verbal lashing and harassment of victims of rape should be considered a hate crime, and there should be legal recourse for it." Schumann is correct, and this is a level and scope of discourse that radical feminists should be engaging in when discussing rape as evidence of communal, not just individual failure. Next slide, please. But some people may be asking, is it really the community's fault? Yes. In addition to being fired from her job, Melinda Coleman observed her daughter being repeatedly harassed in both online and offline spaces following the sexual assault. And although Coleman went on to co-found a nonprofit designed to combat teen sexual violence called Safe Bay, her subjection to male supremacy did not end with a rape or her philanthropic work. Rather, years after the initial rape, Daisy Coleman was stalked by another male. One friend of Daisy's, whose identity People is withholding, says, "Every media outlet is blaming her suicide on her rape and ignoring that she was going through so much before her suicide and not putting any blame on this man for harassing her." And yes, there was so much more. The more included the male harasser showing up at Coleman's house repeatedly and pounding on her door. Coleman reported this information via her Facebook. She also indicated that she believed he was somehow able to steal keys to her apartment and had attempted to enter the space. And so just as I believe that Matthew Barnett raped Daisy Coleman, I believe everything she stated regarding the male stalker who stalked her years after she had been raped by Matthew Barnett. Next slide, please. People reports that in Twitter and Facebook messages available only to Coleman's followers, she stated that the police were already aware of her complaints regarding being harassed and stalked by the same man. However, a police officer named Romero contends that Coleman didn't file any report until the day of her suicide. According to Romero, when officers arrived at her place to complete a welfare check, Coleman filed her report regarding the harassment and stalking. She committed suicide that day. Devastated, Daisy's mother, Melinda Coleman, killed herself just 4 months later. In a suicide-like note she left on Facebook, Melinda Coleman wrote, "Albany wins, I'm dead." In referencing Albany, Coleman refers to the Missouri city that the family moved to following Daisy's subjection to bullying and harassment after coming forward following sexual assault. Unfortunately, the harassment and bullying did not stop when the family moved from Maryville, where the rape transpired, to Albany. Rather, it continued, just like patriarchy. Next slide, please. Melinda Coleman's statement, "Albany wins, I'm dead," may be a helpful rhetorical sequence for individuals who question whether blaming the community is a valid approach to dealing with male supremacy's most powerful muscle, rape. When Melinda Coleman says Albany wins, she is not suggesting that Barnett alone killed her by sexually assaulting her daughter. What she is suggesting is that together, operating in consonance as a community, consciously or unconsciously committed to supporting the patriarchy and its perverse practices and processes, the patriarchal people of Albany committed the acts of harassment and bullying necessary to further harm Daisy and therefore herself. Over the course of time and in context of the ongoing patterns of male harassment and violence which Daisy was accustomed to, rape culture communities, including the community of Albany, won. And this is how the patriarchy wins. It engages in the necrotic practice of taking women's lives in a plethora of metaphorical, metaphysical, and material ways. Next slide, please. So, who should be blamed for the cultural climate created following the rape of Daisy Coleman? I want to identify 4 institutions and or individuals. 1 is the media, 2 is white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, 3 is individuals who viciously, cheerfully supported Matt Barnett, and 4 is liberal feminism. Next slide, please. The media. The media should be blamed for calling the credibility of Daisy Coleman into account for the sexual assault by repeatedly referring to the rape as alleged. As noted in the Reporting on Sexual Violence, a guide for journalists, media representatives should avoid using the term alleged rape or sexual assault. It reinforces the disbelief that a crime actually occurred. The term reported is more neutral. It also indicates that a case is officially part of the justice system. But if the term alleged is used, avoid labeling the victim as an accuser, for this term also reinforces a negative stereotype. The term victim is preferred and is standard in its use within the criminal justice system. Next slide. Thank you. So which media representative should we be blaming? One, ABC News. ABC framed Daisy Coleman's sexual assault this way. Daisy Coleman and her friend claim they were sexually assaulted. I think that using the word claim is actually worse than alleged. It's as if one is suggesting that the victim has to prove the claim as one would do upon writing an essay, citing fact after fact to legitimate the argument being made. Two, the BBC. The BBC reported that Daisy Coleman was 14 when she alleged she was raped at a party in 2012 in Maryville, Missouri. Three, People. People stated that after speaking out about her alleged sexual assault at the hands of a local teen, Matthew Barnett, she became the target of a bullying and slut-shaming campaign in her small town of Maryville, Missouri. Next slide, please. And Time magazine. Although this presentation is focused on the sexual assault of Daisy Coleman by Matthew Barnett, it is important to remember that she was not the only female person victimized that evening. Her friend, Paige Parkhurst, was also sexually assaulted by another male. Yet Time magazine referred to the assault as sex. Luckily, we can read Parkhurst's account of what actually happened. In reporting the horror that she endured, Parkhurst stated, "We got there and they just started handing Daisy Coleman drink after drink after drink. And they had separated us as soon as we got there. And another boy that was there with me had taken me into another room and had sexually assaulted me after me telling him no, pushing him away. And after he was done, he made me go back out into the living room with him. And we sat and waited until Matt was done with Daisy. She couldn't walk, couldn't talk, and was just talking like a baby." Next slide, please. In discussing Parkhurst's rape, Time stated one of the boys had sex with a younger girl and was ultimately prosecuted in juvenile court, but Nottoway County Prosecutor Robert Rice declined to bring charges of any kind against Barnett or another boy who allegedly used a smartphone to record a sexual encounter between Barnett and Coleman. So in addition to mischaracterizing Parkhurst's rape as sex, Time reports that the recording of Coleman being raped was a recording of a sexual encounter. So Time is also guilty of using inappropriate language, not only alleged, but also turning rape into sex. Next slide, please. Also, blame what feminist bell hooks refers to as white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. As men and boys continue making life hell on earth for women and girls, feminists started coming up with terms and phrases for the systems of privilege which enable them to continue subjecting us to deleterious harms without experiencing substantive social, economic, and or political remonstrance. Porn is the theory, rape is the practice, for example. Additionally, feminist bell hooks coined the term white supremacist capitalist patriarchy to describe the presence of a systemic interlocking logic of domination in which racism, hierarchical money systems which privilege the wealthy, and male domination work to sustain the sociocultural and political power of white males while ensuring the subjugation and suppression of everyone else. Next slide, please. In her important book, Feminist Theory from Margin to Center, bell hooks makes important assessments regarding the status of men within white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Specifically, she notes that men are not equal within the system. Indeed, they are not. Wealthier white males have more privileges than white males with less economic power. It appears, at least I am convinced, that Daisy's rapist, Matt Barnett, had a plethora of problematic privileges on account of not only his whiteness and maleness, but also the wealth conferred on him by being the grandson of former Missouri House of Representatives Rex Barnett. Next slide, please. To repeat, the rapist Matthew Barnett was a white male with privilege. In addition to maintaining the privileges that result from being white and male, Barnett is a grandson of Rex Barnett, a former Republican member of the Missouri House of Representatives. Although Barnett is responsible for utilizing his volitional will and autonomous agency to violate another individual through the act of rape, his whiteness, maleness, and privileged position as the grandson of another white male person with political power likely played a role in creating the material conditions and mindset conducive to Barnett believing that A, raping Daisy Coleman was acceptable, and B, there would be no repercussions for him raping Daisy Coleman. Next slide, please. As many individuals who are assiduous and attentive in their analysis of how white supremacist capitalist patriarchy operates may know, Barnett was able to elude punishment under the law prior to raping Daisy Coleman. In discussing Barnett's position of privilege in society with Charlie Coleman, Daisy's older brother, the Baker Orange reported him remembering that Matthew had always seemed proud of his status in Maryville and liked to boast that he had gotten out of multiple offenses, including a DUI and 2 MIP charges. Charlie distinctly remembers a time when Matthew was bragging at football practice about getting off the hook, and one of the defensive coaches called him out about it. And elaborating on the reality of Barnett's privilege, the Baker Orange also reported Coleman stating that, "I didn't think Matthew was a bad person to talk to or hang out with at the time, but I always knew he did some shady stuff. I knew he could get me in trouble, but I also knew he never got in trouble or stayed in trouble." Next slide, please. In reading these assessments, I see how the logic of domination that is white supremacist capitalist patriarchy has become operative and created the conditions that are confluent with white males gaining confident belief in the idea that they do not have to obey laws designed to keep themselves and other members of society safe. It is not just that Barnett was not held responsible for his DUI and operation as a minor in possession of alcoholic beverages, nor is it just that he raped a female person. It is that his ability to get away with the former infringement likely precipitated his belief that he would get away with the latter. And this is how white supremacist capitalist patriarchy works. People who have the power it affords them continually use it in ways which increase their belief that they can use their perverse power more extensively. Their perverse power then literally becomes more extensive and ostensibly unlimited, particularly since, as many feminists have argued, and I agree, the most extensive misuse of power is rape, given the profoundly negative and longstanding impact that sexual abuse has on an individual. Next slide, please. Blame the individuals who viciously, cheerfully supported Matt Barnett. Many individuals cheerfully, viciously supported Matt Barnett as if they were a part of some mind-numbing patriarchal cult, which operated according to the premise that in order to maintain membership, one must gleefully assert his innocence while blaming the victim in ways designed to deepen the hurt that she had already experienced following the sexual assault. Numerous members within the Maryville community acted in consonance with rape culture by promoting the idea that Daisy's sexual assault was her fault, that it did not happen, and that she was wrong for pressing charges against her rapist. I'll reference the pernicious patriarchal behavior of one Barnett supporter here. As noted in the cut, shortly after the alleged assault, for instance, a girl showed up to a school dance competition wearing a homemade shirt that read, "Matt 1, Daisy 0. As noted in the article, the act conveys a mundane, almost cheerful viciousness. Next slide, please. And blame liberal feminism. Blame liberal feminism and its ongoing attempts to propose individual solutions for institutional problems, including the institutional nightmare of male supremacy. Although defined diversely, liberal feminism is basically a form of feminism which advocates for gender equality by reforming existing systems, advancing equal rights legislation, creating opportunities for women in the educational and vocational sectors, and challenging discriminatory practices in societal structures. Rather than emphasizing revolution and the complete dismantling of existing structures, liberal feminism focuses on emphasizing individual autonomy. Next slide, please. One of the many solutions for hearing the pseudo-feminist arguments of liberal feminism is opening our minds to alternative interpretations of reality. This includes theories and strategies which place primacy on understanding how male supremacy operates as an interlocking nexus of power which numerous institutions and individuals operatively work within in order to make patriarchy an ostensibly insurmountable, insuperable power which requires collective action and collective commitment to address. Utilizing the approach of extended culpability contributes to this understanding of reality by enabling us to recognize how both institutions and individuals cooperate to debilitate and demoralize rape victims. Next slide, please. Again, extended culpability implies a recognition of the reality that rape cultures exist. Rape is not an individual problem that can or should be reduced to the egregious actions of one rapist. Entire communities need to be blamed. Next slide, please. Conclusion. If we as radical feminists say that we love women and girls and want to ensure that our work of strategic resistance is systematic and effective, we must continue viewing rape as an institutional rather than individual problem. Therefore, the rise of the rhetoric, blame the rapist, must be expanded to the rhetoric of extending culpability to entire communities for the purpose of subjecting both male supremacy and sexual assault to sustained scrutiny so that we can amass more information regarding how rape operates and what we should be doing about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn, for this framing of a horrible case that I remember reading about, and she was relentlessly harassed, and sadly she took her own life. So thank you very much for explaining the whole situation from the radical feminist point of view, because I think it's going to be very helpful for many women to understand their own experiences within this analysis framework of radical feminism. So thank you, and thank you all the speakers. We are now going to have very briefly a wrap up. We're going to be just asking our presenters whether they have something else to say. Maybe they would like to comment on other women's presentations, or maybe they forgot to say something when they were presenting, or there were some comments on the chat that maybe they would like to address. I don't know whether, Patricia, would you like to say something? ¿Te gustaría decir algo a la audiencia? Puedo traducirte si no es un mensaje muy largo. El micro. Está silenciada.
Sí, ahora. No,
Is there anything? No.
que ha sido un placer escuchar a las demás ponentes, la verdad.
She says she was a pleasure listening to the other speakers today. So, well, thank you very much, Patricia. Muchas gracias por haber aceptado nuestra invitación, y esperamos que, por cierto, tengo que decir, espero que el vídeo circule mucho, porque, bueno, pues todo el relato que has hecho del tremendo abuso que tú también, en fin, psicológico, verbal, sufriste durante tu cancelación, pues fue tremendo, y poderlo poner todo en orden también yo creo que va a servir para visibilizarlo y bueno, hacer justicia, ¿no? O sea que enhorabuena. I was saying to Patricia that I hope that the video really gets viral when we upload her testimony to our YouTube channel, because she was also the subject of a relentless campaign of verbal abuse and harassment and cancellation. So her bravery in putting all that into words, and I think it will help straighten the story, which still goes around, as transphobic attack and all that. So next we're going to hear from Lara. Is there anything you would like to add, Lara, or maybe comment on the other speakers' talks?
I really just appreciated Amy's speech, and Patricia was really worked with mine in giving the affirmations that you need, as well as getting your anger out. We call that fuss boxing. You go out in an alley and you kick boxes, and that's a good way to get your anger out in a safe way. So thanks for that. I know psychology is something that did create this problem, but based on child development, looking at needs that weren't met and revisiting those by reparenting yourself is a form of psychology, but try and keep an open mind. It's not like you're being sat down and told to believe what the psychotherapist says, especially when they're so woke right now. It's just an alternative. And I understand gender is sex, but to reach the parents who are facing children with gender dysphoria, that's the only word we can use. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to hear from Amie. Last words, Amie, anything?
It's just amazing to have woman time. It's so important to have woman time, because your cup gets drained every day. We're in an echo chamber. There's so much negativity, and there's so many people that don't think right, that this is necessary. And sometimes I try and hide and not socialize or participate in anything. And I have to remember that this is part of the healing process, just the magic that happens when women are together. This is why they hate us so much. And it's very important. If you don't see me for a while, just please message me and remind me that this is the most important time. So thank you. I'm really glad I got to share this morning with you, ladies.
Thank you very much, Amie. I just posted the link to the breakout rooms in the chat, so maybe you would like to copy that or hit, and do not join it yet because we're on this active session, but if you have it open on your browser for when we close the session, you would be able to join. Anyway, we will send it to you by email. And then last, Jocelyn, any last words you would like to add to your presentation?
I'm just so delighted and excited and happy to be here with you, sisters, and everyone's presentation is amazing. And I just have to say, Amie, exactly. What stood out to me from what you just said was that people are just not thinking right. That is so simple and so clear. You know, being in academia, things get very complex and convoluted with language, and I come back to trying to be simple and clear in language. People just are not thinking right. They're not. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these last words. And we're going to be closing this webinar now. So to help support these webinars, you know, we do them weekly. Please donate to WDI. There's a link on our website to do so. And thank you to everyone who already does. To get more involved with WDI, please become a member. Together we can fight for women's sex-based rights internationally. There's also a link on our website about WDI membership. And if you have not already registered for this series, you can register via Zoom. After registering, you will receive a confirmation email containing information about joining the webinar, and also a reminder that we have on Sundays a more theoretical webinar where we discuss books and works by radical feminists in order to foster our understanding of patriarchy. So it's not easy engaging in the struggle. So thank you very much for making not just possible, but inspiring and joyful. Last reminder that next week, because of the dates, the holidays, we're going to have a festive party instead of a regular webinar. So we'll be connecting at 3 p.m. UK time, but we will be here in order to celebrate and have fun for a change instead of listening to the awful states of the world. That webinar won't be uploaded to YouTube. It would be just a gathering, a festive gathering of women. So see you next week, and thank you very much.